Hey, everybody, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome to this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. My God, it has been busy. I know I talked about this last week, but we are putting on our Device Talks Boston meeting next week-ish, May 10th and 11th. This is Friday, the April 29th, but May 10th and 11th will be at the BCEC, the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center. For our two-day Device Talks Boston, we will have presentations by Abbott, Boston Scientific, Corindus, DePuy Synthes, Medtronic, Stryker. We'll have MDMA. We will have Medtech Innovator there for 2 days with over 25 top quality startups giving their presentations. We'll have speakers from Vapotherm and other industry leaders. We'll have a venture capital panel that cannot be beat. We'll have a huge exhibition floor. We're sharing it with the Robotics Summit and Expo and the Healthcare Robotics and Engineering Forum. This will be a hub of technology, both medical devices, robotics, surgical robotics. It's all going on, again, May 10th and 11th at the BCEC. It's going to be a fantastic day. We have over 70. I think by the time we're done, we'll have over 80 speakers. And it's just going to be just a lot. And I hope you'll join us. Go to devicetalks.com to find the agenda and, of course, to register. And when you do so, please use the code DTW25. So you'll save 25% off the price of registration. Also, we're working on Device Talks Minnesota, and you need to know about that one as well. You can go to devicetalks.com, sensing a pattern here, and you can find the agenda for Device Talks Minnesota. We will have Tom Poland of BD. We will have Kevin Lobo of Stryker. In Boston, we'll have Shacey Petrovic, I should have mentioned this, of Insulet. We'll have Frank Doyle, Dean of Harvard's Engineering School. We will have an excellent panel by Stryker, moderated by Spencer Stiles. It goes on and on. So go to devicetalks.com. As I was saying with Device Talks Minnesota, please register next week. By the end of next week, our early bird rate will expire. So if you use DTW25, again, Device Talks Weekly, DTW25 on our early bird special, our early bird rate, you'll still save 25%. So 25% off an already discounted rate is an already larger discount off the full price. So no pressure, no FOMO, just giving you some friendly advice from your friendly neighborhood podcaster. So please do check out devicetalks.com for information about those two events. They have been an enormous amount of fun to work on. I've got a video on LinkedIn, if you can find it, sort of just explaining the importance of the Device Talks Boston meeting to me. And you'll see an article in Medical Design and Outsourcing about how fun it will be to run an event in Minnesota as well, because I've done that before. And I've always left Minnesota MedTech meetings feeling enthusiastic and energized. So I really want to plug into that energy for you with both of our Device Talks meetings. So please go to both. We'd love to see you twice. Go to devicetalks.com, pick one, pick both, use the code, and it'll be a joy to see you in person. Before we begin the podcast, I just want to let you know our keynote interview will be with Nick Spadea-Anello. He is Global President of Electrophysiology at Boston Scientific. Reached out to him to talk about Boston Scientific's huge acquisition of Baylis. But of course, we talked about a lot more about the importance of pulse field ablation, about the importance of its direct-to-consumer campaign in launching Watchman, and of course, what Boston Scientific will be doing with the Baylis properties and how it will be engaging Baylis employees. Nick's been through a few major acquisitions himself, so he has a real personal perspective on how things will go. So it was great to talk to Nick, and I know you'll enjoy that conversation. We also have a special guest in the booth, so we'll get this podcast started. But before we begin, I want to thank our sponsor of this episode, KNF. It's great to have them back on the podcast. KNF is a great producer of fluid pumps and other critical technologies. You can find out more about KNF by going to its website, knf.com. You can also listen to or hear from a few of their leaders a little later in this podcast. So let's get this episode going. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker. How are you, sir?
Good to be here, Tom. And man, we got somebody here today.
Yeah, we got a big guest here. We got Brian Johnson, president of MassMedic. But of course, folks listening to this podcast would know him as founder or co-founder of MassDevice and DeviceTalks. Hey, Brian, welcome.
Gentlemen, great to see you guys. Great to see you guys.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Yeah, I was going to ask, we should have probably taken down the oil painting of you we have in the green room. Was that daunting to look at, that image of yourself sitting in that leather chair?
No, it's exactly as I demanded it. Well, every digital media founder must pose for their official portrait before they depart. So
that's right. Well, we still call you the Godfather around here. So you're gone but not forgotten.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of MassDevice. What convinced you to get this started?
Years ago, I was a newspaper reporter at a daily, and I covered business. And I actually covered some of these companies that I deal with now on a membership basis. Abiomed and Zoll, in particular, are the two ones that kind of pop out. Show you how much I knew about it. I mean, this was back in 2005, and it was right around when Abiomed's artificial heart program failed. And I remember sort of saying, well, that's the end of those guys. That's what I knew. One of the things that was really interesting to me at the time was I had a really great editor who kind of taught me how to navigate the SEC website, how to really read 10Qs, 10Ks, 8Ks. These are the forms, obviously, that companies have to file with the SEC. And after I left the newspaper and I ended up doing some work for a consulting company, and they sent me to the MassMedic Investors Conference in 2007. It was really kind of a classic aha moment. It was like all these great startup companies presenting. It was, and you could feel the energy in the room. There was this technology where they were basically pitching that they're like these little mini robots that would climb on the heart. This is like a program. It never went anywhere. I think it was probably out of the Visa Institute, actually, if I think about it. And then I remember David Lucchino. He was pitching Sempris Biosciences, and it just there was something about it. I just said, this is exciting. This is where the action is. And I went home and, I said, I'll start a website. I went and I actually just bought the domain name that night, MassDevice.com.
Wow.
My son, who's a freshman in high school, was an infant. And I did the thing where you put the baby in one hand and you go to GoDaddy and, I bought the thing, and the original concept was we were going to do regional coverage, right? Yeah. So we were in Mass and Minnesota and Palo Alto, and it was, I had done some sports blogging and stuff like that, which kind of taught me how to get an audience. So I knew the mechanics that had to happen. I knew how to build an audience. What I didn't have was any credibility as an entrepreneur, and I had even less credibility as a Medtech guy. My dad was a Medtech salesman. And then, as a guy who spent a lot of his career helping to build, sales forces for medical device companies, some amazing sales forces, actually, Intuitive Surgical and several other, brand name companies. So I was around these guys. But I never wanted to be in the Medtech industry. Mm-hmm. I guess it was in my blood. And, the thing that, it's funny how it is such an aha moment. And it's the kind of the funny part too, obviously, is that I ended up here at MassMedic, sort of full circle.
Right.
So, every time I do a meeting, I'm like, well, maybe there's another me in there. So, hopefully they're much better.
That's great.
I recall you got, you really got MassDevice going in 2008, which, as I recall, that was like one of the best years ever to really start a company. Was 2008.
Well, it was a great time. So we launched. So I had this. I got the idea in 2007, and I talked. I went to some friends that I went to grad school with and who I'd worked with, and sort of tried to get them to join me. I went to grad school with Brad Perriello. And we were buddies, and we were watching the football game and barbecuing. And I was like, "Come on, this is real. This is gonna work. This is gonna work." And he was skeptical, and I just said, just go look up the industry and think about this, and then we spent a lot of time. I mean, we it took us 15 months to get it off the ground, and we were pitching and we tried to raise money, and we like I was telling somebody today, I was like, we were not only were in the wrong business at the wrong time, right? Ad supported media during the the Great Recession. We picked MedTech rather than biotech. So like even the people who would concede that maybe we weren't total idiots, would be like, you picked the wrong industry. Nobody cares about medical devices. They care about biotech. And, and the thing I could not admit to them was like, I don't, how do you make assays and molecules sexy? I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't understand it. And every time I talked to pharma and biotech, I just couldn't conceptualize the narrative, because it reminded me of covering the energy industry, right? Like I remember when the NSTAR guys would come, they'd do a road show to the newspaper, and we'd talk about the grid. And I couldn't find the story because I was always struggling with the language, but devices were tangible, and they would also have this great. The thing that still I love is they have this great backstory. Pretty much every entrepreneur starts this out of a purpose, and I think narratively, med device was just there for me, and I was so excited. And I can't tell you how many times over the years that I thought we were failing. I mean, I probably thought we were on death's door for like 8 of the 9 years I ran the thing. And it's only sort of now when I'm separated that I can look and feel really excited and proud of the progress. And it's humbling. It's incredible. And, kudos to you guys. You guys have made it your own, and I love what you're doing with it.
That's great. No, thanks. I feel like I'm talking into a mirror here too, because a lot of your points are things I've felt. I've seen entrepreneurs start things. I wanted to start things, but I never have pulled the trigger. And just also your view of devices versus biotech. I agree with you. Like small molecule, I can never really understand what that even means.
Like a robot operating on somebody's body. I mean, that sounds exciting. It's a robot. It's operating somebody's body. This device is keeping somebody's heart running. It's a tube in a vessel or thing. It's just something you can get your head around. But we're working on DeviceTalks Boston, and I wrote something for the letter in the program about growing up in Boston. I grew up in Boston, and not really unlike in Minnesota or the West Coast, even like the medical device industry, and you're working on this at MassMedic, and we'll talk about that a little later. You don't hear about it at barbecues. If you say I work at Boston Scientific, people don't go like, oh, like you would if you work at Google or Amazon. Do you get that sense as well? Am I being overly defensive? As Jim Hammer, the managing editor of MDO, said, you sound a little defensive in your letter, Tom. And I said, well, I'm from Boston. Of course I sound defensive. Like we're always defensive. What do you want me to sound nice about it? No, I'm defensive. So do you agree? Am I being defensive, or?
Are you asking another Boston guy?
Well, you said I'm defensive? What are you talking about?
You're defensive. I'm not defensive.
Well, first of all, I don't think you sound defensive. So, I mean, I always have to check myself on this, right? Because I think there is a high degree of understanding of medical devices. I don't think there's a high degree of awareness of how much you engage with them as an everyday person. I don't think there's a high awareness of the companies that make medical devices. I think there is a general awareness of the biotech world in the sort of layman's world, but to them, it's an umbrella term for everything we do, right? Life sciences, what we talk about here a lot in Massachusetts, because it's the 3 legs of the stool: biotech, pharma, and medtech. But not only is this sort of definitely defensiveness is definitely sort of a natural state for device people. I mean,
I'm doubly blessed. Great.
And Bostonians, but I think there is a huge desire in medtech, and it fuels me because it's really, I've sort of discovered that I guess this is the thing that I'm most, and it most makes me so excited all the time, is my job is really to make sure that everybody understands how incredible this sector is. And I think we're in a different position than we were before COVID in understanding of this industry, but this is still an industry that is, it's still a little widgety, and it's in the way it kind of talks about itself. It doesn't have the same natural storytelling of pharma and biotech. But I think that's because, frankly, the industry is engineers and it's hardware, and it's people are excited by the hardware. And it's not that much different than sort of the people who made computers versus sort of the Silicon Valley tech people, right? I mean, the tech people are really good at mythologizing and talking about and storytelling and talking about how their products are going to change the world. And frankly, they start to sound very trite when they talk about it, because if you compare what Earl Bakken did to Elon Musk, I mean, I still would probably say Earl Bakken is a more important person in the history of the world, right? Yep. If you take So we have to think about this in terms of storytelling narrative. And the thing that I kind of have been driving at recently is this idea of minimally invasive surgery. And, we have a language problem in medtech where we anesthetize the language and we dull it and we make it boring. Now, minimally invasive surgery is really boring in terms of what you say, okay, it's minimally invasive. What does it mean? Well, it means that we have been able to change, cutting people wide open, to cure them, to taking this down to, almost nano scale, where now you can change a heart valve out with a wire. Yeah. And, or you can actually, at this point, we're at the point now with MedTech where we can start to put something into your body through a catheter, thread it up in your brain. You can see inside the vasculature of the brain. This stuff is outer space stuff. And it's the thing that we haven't done in medtech is we didn't, I don't think the poets haven't sort of written enough about it, right? I mean, so I think our generation of people who are responsible for telling this story, our story is to add some music to this industry. But also, this industry is changing, and it's changing fast. I think when we start, because we all started, we've all been covering this industry for years. You guys were the other bylines I was looking at, in 2010, 2011, right? I mean, it'd be like, oh, damn it, what's Newmarker doing over there? Selenian. Damn, Selenian is reports. I used to read you guys' byline all the time. And I do think our job is to make sure that we continuously stay amazed and impressed. And, I certainly talk about it at barbecues, and I certainly try to make it exciting. And I think it's important too, because it's incredible stuff. I mean, it's changing the world.
I agree. I'm still excited about stories. When someone tells me about a cool company, I still get that's awesome. That they're able to do that. So I still get that excitement. And I think you've said it extremely well about putting music to this. I think it's up to us to sort of, minimally invasive. It should be microsurgery, or it should be something just something that really captures it. And I think maybe it's the lack of interaction direct interaction between patient and devices. I think as we get moving with diabetes, where we're seeing a lot more interaction between those devices and the patients, and they actually have control over the devices, then people are starting to say wow, this thing's amazing. Hey everyone, Tom here. It's my pleasure to bring in our episode's sponsor, KNF. I'm here with Dave Vanderbeck, Product Group Manager at KNF. Dave, tell us about KNF.
KNF is a designer and manufacturer of diaphragm and piston pumps for gases and liquids. We serve the OEM, laboratory, and process industries, and our markets include medical primarily, but we are also heavily involved into environmental, analytical instruments, cleaning and disinfection, printing, and many more. How would I describe KNF? Well, basically, we are a large, engineering-driven, family-owned company. KNF is Germany and Switzerland based, with 17 locations and 5 production sites, including our USA manufacturing facility that handles sales, most manufacturing and service for North America. But I have to say that engineering is really at the core of our design philosophy. This is what separates us from other pump manufacturers, is our passion to customize our pump's design so that we could optimize the customer's system. We do this by establishing a close collaboration with our customers so that we may learn what pump features will allow them to design a system that will meet all of their engineering and marketing department's goals. Then we make use of our 75 plus years of experience and our modular designs to custom tailor the pump to the application. And in fact, we've been doing this process for so many years that we've actually refined the design and modification process to the point that we can do it efficiently and without adding cost for one piece or thousands. And then, which is important to medical as well as other fields, we can freeze the bill of materials for these customized designs that are then proprietary to the customer. So in the end, we achieve success by contributing to making the customer's system a success.
That's great, Dave. We'll hear a little more from KNF a little later in the podcast. If you want to find out some more information, go to knf.com. Well, let's roll into Chris's Newmarker's Newsmakers, and then a little later we'll talk about MassMedic and what you're doing over there. So, Chris, why don't you
the Newmarker's Newsmakers
roll us into number 5?
All right, number 5 on the list this week. We've got Alcon, presenting a positive study about its smart cataract, cloud-enabled software that's kind of like really like streamlining everything around cataract surgeries. And just basically the study was showing that this was like saving a lot of time when it came to cataract surgeries. So just really interesting. It's interesting too because just lately, like the whole ophthalmological space, it's actually, we're getting a lot of interest about it on MassDevice, and it just seems, we talk about like surgical robotics and diabetes, those are exciting spaces, but there's actually some really cool stuff now going on with treatments for the eye. I'm also thinking about like J&J had their new contact lenses that elute antihistamines. That's really helpful. So yeah, it'll be neat.
Yeah, I worked on a podcast and meetings for ophthalmology for a few years, and it's really like the one specialty where devices and pharma really do form a single unit in ophthalmology. Like there's really it's a really tight community. A lot of the doctors are using the same sort of procedures or drugs. And they're really astounding innovation coming out of that field. So this is great. And as someone who's 52 going on 53, every time I see advances in treating cataracts and stuff, I'm like, yes, I hope you're ready for me when I get older. So
yeah, it's a great space. It's a unique space. Sort of eye insurance is kind of, nobody really has a great handle on their eye insurance, although I think we all have some sort of basic eye exam coverage. It's one of these, it's kind of like dentistry in a lot of respects, but the thing that I find really fascinating is that the scanning of your eye and all the other conditions you can discover through the eye. We're just getting started on that. And, if you think about, I first got glasses when I was a little kid. So, that eye doctor's office hasn't changed that much, frankly. So, that thing's going to get all that stuff in that office is going to get stuck into like one, small thing too. So, there's a lot of really interesting progress being made. And I like that market a lot. It's really exciting.
All right, Chris, why don't we roll into number 4?
Well, number 4 on the list, this is some tough news. We've got Philips disclosing that the Department of Justice has subpoenaed them for information around their massive recall of Respironics respiratory devices. The really big major recall in that space involves problems with deteriorating sound abatement foam in the devices, but other stuff has cropped up, and now it looks like the Justice Department is wants to find out more about how Philips was handling this.
Brian, I don't know if you want to speak to this directly.
Brian is zipping his lips right now.
But I'm just curious as to how is MedTech sort of interacting with government agencies? You're spending a lot of your time in policy, and do you feel like what's the relationship between the medical device industry and government agencies that either regulate them or oversee them in some regards, like the DOJ, which you don't see a lot of the DOJ involved with this sort of stuff?
Yeah, I don't do a lot with the DOJ.
Yeah. That's okay, I'm sure. Yeah.
That's right.
And more power to them. And Philips is a wonderful company. But I think this is obviously federally regulated industry, and I think I was amazed by how much more how much more engagement I do with lawmakers and policymakers on this side. Not so much on the recall things. I mean, we don't really do a lot of, there's not really a lot of policy stuff going on in the recall end of it. Really more of it's on, obviously the user fee negotiations were a little bit rockier this year than in past times. There's a lot of very ambitious stuff at the FDA going on, but I think most of the market dynamics are the same. But I just think it's important that when people read these stories, realize, the FDA requires, cradle to grave oversight of your products, and companies, recalls do not make up a large percentage of actions that happen with medical devices. But I mean, the policy discussion is a deep one and an interesting one. We may never get to story number 3.
Yeah, but I just out of curiosity, I mean, how ambitious do you think FDA is now that they have Califf in charge? In fact, you got like somebody who ran the place before and he's back in, and you might even like find one of his old pieces of like office knickknacks in a drawer somewhere or whatever,
when I was first covering medical devices, we had Peggy Hamburg was head of the agency, and there was talk of eliminating the 510K program. And there wasn't talk. There was the Institute of Medicine report that came out that the FDA sort of said, no, we're not doing that. I think there are, Dr. Shern has some very ambitious programs. I think, total product life cycle is a really, sort of understanding the product as it's in the market is going to continue. They're going to continue to really drive that. I think the push and the pull with the user fee agreements were, how many new programs did FDA want to start, versus sort of what industry feels is their main priority, which is making sure that all the players understand a predictable timeline. I think. Yeah. And that you're not sitting in, endless queues and sort of dying a slow death while you're waiting. The programs that I think are the most important to the industry, frankly, are, we had the MSIT program was this, with the breakthrough in MSIT were a really interesting moment there where finally people were trying to put together some sort of help for innovators, right? And to say, like, who's going to decide if a device is actually novel and, worth being on the market? Is it the FDA or CMS? And I think the sad part about the MSIT program dying the way it did, even though it has been reborn into another program that right now is kind of in the house, kind of percolating, but it's going to take some time. The sad part was, like, at least we were trying to get some clarity around there. The push and the pull of you get FDA clearance or a PMA, and then you got to go to climb the second mountain with.
I could tell there was a lot of excitement around this idea, like, wow, you get a breakthrough device designation. Okay, great, you're going to get CMS coverage. Yeah. I mean, that was a huge deal, and to see that go away, at least for now, was tough.
Well, it's not, but it's not dead forever.
It's not.
CMS definitely, though. I mean, it was a Trump administration policy that the Biden.
You're making a chocolate covered pill to give it. It's not totally dead.
I have Monty Python in my head. I'm not dead yet.
I still think there's a high degree of interest in solving this problem. MSIT, there was a feeling on the Medicare side that, there was too many questions to try and implement it as policy. So, I think everybody though who listens to this who wants MSIT should call their congressman and say we want the program, right? I mean, the other stuff I think that's interesting too, just to kind of keep your eye on down the line, is the SBIR program needs to be reauthorized. Oh
wow, really?
Yeah, and yes, and ranking, there's some members of the committee that do that are, professional skeptics.
Wow.
Senator Paul, Rand Paul being a major skeptic of the SBIR program. So right now we are, as sort of collective advocacy bodies, trying to get companies to sign on to support the SBIR reauthorization. I think.
How often does that need to be reauthorized?
Yeah. I believe it's every 5 years.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's happened recently, but yeah, the climate has certainly changed a bit. All right, Chris Newmarker, what is number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers?
Well, number 3 on the list, we've got Abbott announcing the U.S. launch of their Amplatzer steerable delivery sheath that goes with their Amulet stroke prevention device. So, just a much better delivery, just an improved delivery system for this device, which it seems like it could be like help. Reduce use of blood thinning, medication for people with AFib. So that's really good news. And actually, Abbott had some other big news out this week with, launching an upgraded digital health app for neurostimulation. So just, a lot of interesting stuff coming out of Abbott these days.
Yeah, that stroke market is it's an incredible market. Because I don't know how long after you've had a stroke, you need to get a surgical intervention. I think it's pretty soon, like 90 minutes.
Really fast. Yeah.
And that's one area where telemedicine, remote surgery it's all about the stroke. So 1 out of 5 people are going to have a stroke. So, you got to.
Yeah, and we could hopefully, reduce that, if we could catch more undiagnosed AFibs. So, that's really the big hope here, that's a really exciting space too. All those companies like iRhythm and, Bardy DX and AliveCore and such, instead of them strapping a Holter monitor onto you, you can just go home with a nice little monitor and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, uncontrolled AFib is a huge predictor of stroke. So that's a market you're just going to see continuous investment in, and
find the AFib. Now we got a device we can use to help prevent the AFib from causing a stroke, and as he said, get stuff that is able to get treatment to you faster if you have the stroke, so you don't it doesn't kill you or seriously impair the rest of your life. So
yeah, we're really lucky to where we live. Chris, you being in Minneapolis, and Tom and I being in the Boston area. There's a comprehensive stroke care clinic at almost every major hospital in the area. But you go out to rural America in some places where you got an hour, 2-hour drive, or maybe even in some states they don't actually have a single comprehensive stroke care clinic. That is why you see so much investment in this space.
Yeah. When people avoiding living in rural areas because they're afraid of getting medical care when they're older. It can be good life out there. So
Corindus vascular robotics is a really cool solution locally that's really deep into that stroke space. So
yeah. That's some exciting work going over there.
I feel like I should be firing off the plug alert, because Corindus and Abbott will both be at DeviceTalks Boston, which of course is happening May 10th and 11th at the Boston Convention and Exchange Center. BCEC, we'll just say. Keep saying it Exchange Center, and it's not that. Exhibition Center. The Convention Center.
The convention. There you go.
Yeah. So,
all
awesome.
right.
All right, Chris, what is number 2 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers?
Oh, number 2 on the list, we have GE Healthcare and Medtronic are collaborating in the outpatient care space. They're forging this new partnership where GE Healthcare is going to be, providing ambulatory surgery centers with consultative planning, construction, suite of equipment, digital solution services, and then Medtronic is going to come in with their whole portfolio of products. So, a big partnership in a really fast growing, space. It makes me wonder too, like, could this be ahead of the next, really big, merger we're going to see? But, at the same time, we've also, seen the Biden administration, showing a lot more concern about these types of big mergers. So, maybe a partnership like this is enough, but yeah, very exciting.
That is exciting. Are you speculating that Medtronic is going to buy GE?
Well, not GE, but GE Healthcare is spinning off as an independent company. So I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, we had 4 eyebrows go up here on the old Zoom call. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, get them on Kramer.
That's right. Do we have a little bell here?
Yeah, that's a sizzle.
Jeff Martha just drove off the road after hearing this one. All right. Well, let's roll on to number one.
You definitely have to pay attention when you have like 2 of the largest medtech companies around saying, "Hey, we're partnering to sell to places." I mean, that's.
We'll keep an eye on it. All right, Chris Newmarker, let's finish it off. What's number 1 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers?
All right, number 1 on the list. We've got. I think I'm going to pronounce this right. Baylis Medical.
You got it.
I got it. All right. They're selling their left heart access portfolio to Medtronic at a $50 million deal. And, one of the hot spaces is cardiac ablation. Where could we find out more about cardiac ablation? Like maybe there's this event called DeviceTalks Boston, or there's gonna be some kind of panel there about that, right?
It rings a bell, Chris. It rings
something
a bell.
Like that.
It's gonna be a panel with folks.
Somebody from Medtronic, right?
Yep, Medtronic, Boston Scientific, and Acutus will be on the panel, and it'll be moderated by the world famous journalist. What's his name again?
Oh, I think you're having me do that.
Yes.
No,
you stepped up to do that. I'm not having you do it. You're excited to do it.
I was like, this is exciting. You know what? It's an exciting space. I'm gonna moderate that panel. So yeah, we'll be able to find out more about what was behind. I think we'll find out more about what was behind this deal and what's going on in the space. But I mean, obviously, if you're doing cardiac ablation, you need more access. Boston Scientific recently closed on a $1.75 billion acquisition to Baylis Medical to get access to its advanced transseptal puncture platform. So this is this says something that Medtronic's like saying, hey, we need to get more technology. We're going to spend $50 million to acquire some of this. Gosh, it's $50 million from Acutus. And on Acutus' side, this at least analysts reporting out this will keep them allow them to keep their cash balance going until early 2024. I mean, this technology was like a contributor to their revenue, but Medtronic needed the technology. Acutus needed some more cash, to get to its next spot. Hopefully this works out for both companies.
Absolutely. And we'll have Nick Spadea-Anello from Boston Scientific up on the podcast in just a few minutes. We actually talked with him about the Baylis acquisition, and we did try to get an analyst on the podcast to talk about whether this was sort of a response from Medtronic. I wasn't able to get anyone on, but I did email with someone who said, yeah, it's clearly, like a counter to the Baylis acquisition that left ventricular access is just an important part of this. So it'll be interesting to see where this space comes up, and hopefully you'll be able to unearth all the details at DeviceTalks Boston. Chris Newmarker, I've got high hopes for you.
It'll be an exciting panel. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, before we roll into that interview, Brian, we didn't really get to talk about MassMedic itself. We talked about the work you're doing there, but tell us a bit about the organization and what your objectives are, what you're hoping to do.
Well, it's a great organization, Tom. It's it's been around since 1996. So a lot of work was already done when I got here to establish this organization as the voice of the industry locally. It's a trade association, so the business model is kind of interesting. So it's a membership model, and but it's also it's a convener, it's an event creator, it's an advocacy organization, it's a connective tool. What we've tried to do is first grow it, headcount wise. So when I got here, there was 2 people, and now I have 6 people working for us. great people. They're just super engaged and very mission driven, which I love. We relaunched the Ignite virtual accelerator a couple years ago. So we've been taken 50 companies through a curriculum we built on how to start a medtech company. Those companies, 40 something are still in business, which is great. And they're very early stage, and they raised those companies have raised $100 million in the past 2 years. So we're either really good at picking companies that are going to, or we're pretty decent at this part. But really what I'm trying to do with MassMedic is grow it into an association that helps make some of these connections that we talk about all the time, right? I mean, my theory is we're in a period of sort of great evolution of medical technology, and we're crossing over into sort of that quantified patient we talked about years ago, right? Remember when Google was toe dipping in here, and there was talk about everybody wanted to know all about their health, and it was like only extreme athletes were doing it. Well, guess what? One pandemic later, we're all focused on what's happening inside of our bodies, and now the only people who knew how to perform basic diagnostic tests on themselves were like people with chronic diseases, but now we all can run a pretty simple lab test. Yeah. Right. And we all understand now what our blood oxygen level means, and we're all talking. I mean, to me, when I saw an FDA,
yes, I did not have a pulse oximeter in my house before 2020.
When I saw the advisory committee meeting for the vaccine being broadcast live on CNBC or whatever it was, I said, okay, this is what we've been talking about forever, right? Your health is your wealth, right? And the world is realizing that, and so this next evolution for MassMedic is to connect some of these dots between these people that are making medical technology and connect them to our broader life experience. So we're trying to create a larger community that's more inclusive on every level. We're trying to get more people excited by this industry, and we're trying to spread the wealth of the industry to everybody. And we really are just so laser focused on making sure that when Massachusetts and New England people understand that this industry is here, it's a viable career path, it's touching your life, it's going to continue to be a huge part of your life. So a lot of fun stuff. Mostly every day, we just try to help make sure that people in this industry get a little more successful, and make sure they know about great events like Device Talk. The Medtech conference is coming here in October from AdvaMed, and we hope that we're excited to have them into town. And we're still very local. We're very focused on Massachusetts and New England, but what we can do is be an incubator for awesome ideas, and we're excited by it. And Chris, we have our eyes solely straight on Medical Alley. So you tell my friends over there we're coming.
Yeah. You're coming. Like there's a little competition, a little regional competition.
Nothing wrong with that.
I love what they do at Medical Alley. They're an inspiration for us. So we love what they're doing, and we want to make sure they hear us.
All right, now we're going to begin our interview with Nick Spadea-Anello of Boston Scientific. But first, I wanted to bring in our sponsor, KNF. I am speaking with Dave Howard, Business Development Manager at KNF. Dave, I know KNF has been busy lately. What's new? What can you talk about?
Thanks a lot, Tom. Well, as you've already heard, KNF is a manufacturer of both liquid and gas diaphragm and piston pumps that have been used in many applications around the world. Our main focus here in the U.S., though, has been with medical devices and especially diagnostic systems. Recently, we have noticed an increased drive for fluidic systems that reduce or completely remove the existence of pulsation, which is typically generated by pumps within the circuit. So we have actually been really hard at work to develop an entirely new line of what we call smooth flow products. Pulsation is nearly impossible to avoid with many pump technologies. Half the time the pump is drawing liquid in, and the other half of the time it's pushing liquid out. So no matter how fast you run the pump, you still have this stop and start motion of the liquid, which basically leads to what we feel and hear in tubing when it's shaking and vibrating around. So at times, the pressure fluctuations generated by the pulsation can lead to all types of problems. It can cause cavitation and air bubbles in the media. The vibrating tubing itself can be felt throughout the system, which could impact the accuracy of analytical devices and so forth. Tubing in the system actually ends up wearing quicker, and over time, this could lead to sporadic leakages. And also, you have this inconsistent performance, basically depending on what types of restrictions you have in the lines. So K&F has essentially fixed this problem with this new line of smooth flow and low pulse products. We call them our FP product line, and we can accommodate flow rates as low as just a few milliliters per minute, all the way up to 12 liters per minute, and operating pressures up to 6 bar. So with all of the changes that went into the design and the development of these products, we're actually now seeing a more efficient pump. And this is both from a size standpoint as well as regarding power consumption. Vibration is, of course, minimized. Stress on tubing is now reduced, and there's much less chance of cavitation. And with these lower peak-to-peak pulsation fluctuations, we're actually expecting much longer lasting pumps with much less stress on the motor or bearings and so forth. So really, we're just really excited to get more of these pumps into these medical device industry, and we're already seeing some really positive feedback from our customers.
Well, thanks again to K&F for sponsoring this podcast. Thanks to Dave Howard and Dave Vanderbeck of K&F for sharing their thoughts. If you want to find out more information, you can go to knf.com. You can also send an email to Dave Howard. He is at dave.howard@knf.com. Well, Nick Spadea-Anello, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Tom. I'm excited to be here for you and your listeners, and looking forward to a meaningful discussion.
You've got a great deal to talk about. The Baylis acquisition was certainly a big one and a fascinating one, and I can't wait to learn how it fits into your electrophysiology portfolio. But before we get into the business at hand, I'd love to understand how you found your way into the Medtech industry. What was your first job at Medtech?
It was with Johnson & Johnson, Ethicon Endosurgery. It was a really great company because we were pioneering new procedures with laparoscopy and endoscopy in general. And J&J was a great start for me because it provided me the opportunity to really understand how to speak the language of medicine coming out of a business school and university. It was a really great opportunity to work with a really passionate and influential group of people. And J&J really taught you the importance of just the credo and how patients really are at the forefront of everything. And it was just really a good opportunity for me to learn how to get into the med device space nearly 30 years ago. It's been a great entryway for all the other things I've been able to do.
Were you always steering toward a career in medtech, or did it just happen that you found a great job with a great company?
Yeah, well, for me, I think when you get out of school, you're looking for a meaningful purpose. And I had the opportunity. I was going to get into banking. I was interviewed by J&J. They were looking to try to do something different with a group of people coming out of business school. And looking at really how all things start with patients and trying to extend their lives and have them live a longer, better life. That self-actualization, coupled with the business aspects of things in healthcare, just the challenges of that, and dealing with people that were highly educated, physicians, engineers, to try to really solve problems to make things a lot better. That inspired me. And that's what really got me into the space and, excites me to this day, because there's you never arrive mentality. You're always learning, no matter what role you play at the highest level. There's always a learning opportunity and the advancement of meaningful innovation in the medical device space.
That's interesting about J&J's program. So they were looking to bring in business majors and sort of folks with a business understanding. I talked to someone else recently on the podcast, and I think around this time, Medtronic had brought in its first MBAs, and they were sort of bringing in their business acumen as well. Was that just sort of a thing that was happening across the industry at the time?
Well, 30 years ago, it was something new that J&J, I think, was pursuing. And for me, I knew it was a great company. It was a completely different shift in terms of what I was going to do. Getting into finance was really something I was focused on. But quite frankly, when I went for the interview and I did a field ride and watched the representative really just walk a physician through a procedure, it was incredibly inspirational. I mean, here you're talking to someone who's got decades of education and experience in working with patients, and you walking through technically how to use a new device was something that was just a breakthrough opportunity that I thought was going to be a new challenge to drive inspiration every day and learn the business end of things to see how they would contract with these big health systems at that time is really what drove that opportunity.
Yeah, that's really eye-opening, I think, when you first engage with the healthcare system in that way and learn how it operates. And I'm sure you've seen things that I haven't seen, but you don't know going in exactly just how decisions are made, how products are bought and sold, and how even patients are treated. I'm sure it was a really educational experience. How did you come to join Boston Scientific?
Well, if I looked at my career, it's really in three phases. So I started with J&J, and I think that taught me how to transition into med device and learn how to be a really good representative and speak the language of medicine and get clinically and technically oriented. Then in the late 90s, Guidant Corporation was recruiting some folks to bring over to launch some other pioneering therapies, cardiac resynchronization therapy. That's where I think I learned more about how to be a strong business professional in that phase of my career. And I did a number of various commercial leadership roles, and we drove some really considerable adoption in that new therapy. And then, call it the current phase of my career, the last 15 years, I've been with Boston Scientific because Boston acquired Guidant. And that's where I've learned more about just how to be a high-level leader in the med device space. So each one of those different opportunities has allowed me to grow professionally at different stages. It's been a great ride. And quite frankly, when I look back, I'm just really thankful for all the people that I've been able to work with that really has allowed me to grow and be able to give back to the industry and to patients and everything we do in this space.
We've had Guidant people on before, of course, and I always jokingly try to get them to remember something ill about the experience, because everyone I've talked to about Guidant walks away saying it was a tremendous experience, a tremendous learning experience. So what was it about Guidant that I think that really leaves people feeling so positive about the time spent there?
Well, I think the group did a really good job. That organization really focused on hiring business professionals that had experience in the medical device industry that truly could drive some significant growth, whether it was in the stent marketplace or the cardiac rhythm management marketplace. Both of those businesses were growing and prospering during that era of call it 2000 to 2010. And the people they had that recruiting process was recruit the absolute best people that could really drive and grow adoption of these therapies, these new innovative therapies, breakthrough therapies. And I think you're only as good as the people that you work with and that drive you to be better. And there was just a lot of excellent professionals there that made you have to perform at a much higher level. And that's where I think I really transitioned from that medical, call it clinical technical background with J&J Ethicon Endosurgery to being a high-level medical device business professional at Guidant Corporation.
And of course, that acquisition was one of the larger ones in Medtech. What kind of experience is that going through an acquisition like that? And we're going to talk about the acquisition of Baylis in a little bit. I'm just curious, what lessons do you walk away from being a part of a company that is acquired?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to look at your success, and then you got a new group of people that come in that have a different, purchasing power, different footprint, bigger capacity or capabilities. And you've got to believe in the leaders they bring in. You get this frontline leadership that comes in from any company that's acquiring another company. And you've got to believe in their new vision. And can what you've already done, which has been great, a great experience, can it be better? And I think, the trust at that point, we had Hank Cushman, who was one of the individuals that came in and spoke to us. He was believable. And, I followed his vision, and it was a great transition over to Boston Scientific. And I'm just really excited because that's where I learned how to truly be a high level leader and build, call it that trust. So when we make acquisitions, I realize the importance of when I go and speak to a new company, such as a Baylis, that I was sitting in their seat one day. Anything's possible. That you could come over here and you could be in my role as you look at integrating or acquiring another company to make that journey even bigger and better for the company and where it stands organizationally at that time. So it's really driving belief in the new vision and that it can be even better. Take something that's good and make it even better once an acquisition takes place.
Well, let's talk about your role now. What part of Boston Scientific's portfolio do you oversee? Because you have a couple of critical areas that you're working with.
Yeah, so I'm currently the president of our electrophysiology business as of the last 5 months. And, the last several years I've been leading as the president of our structural heart business. And that predominantly was our Watchman business. So I had the chance, Joe Fitzgerald and Mike Mahoney asked me to integrate Atritech, which was Watchman. And then the last, call it 5 months, they've asked me to see if I can call it the $4 billion in acquisitions they've made in electrophysiology, try to tell a story and create an opportunity, I should say, that was similar to our success in Watchman with electrophysiology, because we've got some great technology. When you look at the AF patient, and quite frankly, Watchman or Watchman Flex, how do we catapult that success into all things we're trying to do with the portfolio? And the portfolio has a lot of things, but the things that really inspire me when I came over here was this Baylis acquisition and the acquisition of Farapulse. Those are two key leading technologies coupled with Watchman, with everything we offer in the EP space for the electrophysiologist, that I think really gathers their attention meaning the electrophysiologist, to be able to really just understand where we were and where we're going is a completely different space. So that inspires me to have this opportunity, because I've got a lot of respect for our strategic competitors. They've done a really good job in this space. But my job is to try to make this opportunity all come to life, given the investments we've made recently.
Well, it's really remarkable how competitive this space has become. You're right. We'll have Dr. Ken Stein of your company at our Boston DeviceTalks Boston meeting in May with representatives from Acutus and Medtronic, and it seems as if this space is just building and building. What is it that's sort of driving the race? It's almost sort of I don't want to say it's an arms race, but a tools race in this space when it comes to pulse field ablation? Is it just the leveling of technology and innovation that we're getting to a point where there's a good level of these tools around to give everyone a similar sort of approach to treating this? What is it about the space that is bringing so many big players to the table?
Well, specifically in electroporation or some of the other tools around ablation?
Let's talk about ablation, pulse field ablation. It's interesting that you've got Medtronic, you've got Acutus, you've got Boston Scientific all sort of moving into this space. It's becoming very competitive, or at least very active.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's hundreds of thousands of ablations that are conducted annually. I think the last 10 years, it's been really impressive to see just how ablation has evolved from RF energy modalities to cryo energy modalities. And while the outcomes have been good and they've gotten incredibly better, there's opportunity to make it even safer and even more efficient. And that's what electroporation really brings to the table. I mean, the ability to potentially take procedures that could be an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, down to an hour or less, in some cases 40 minutes, and to do it in a manner that is safer. And then the IDE trials will really talk a little bit about, is it as good or maybe even better? I mean, that's what excites everybody. This is why this field is so exciting, because that you never arrive mentality is really indicative of some of the meaningful innovation of Farapulse. And Farapulse, Tom, is the only, I'll pitch here for us, the only approved device in the world for electroporation or pulse field ablation. And we've treated over 3,000 patients. And by the end of this year, we'll treat nearly 15,000 patients. So we've got a substantial lead in this space, what we think could transform ablation, cardiac ablation.
That's a great point. So talk a bit about your portfolio, all that you do have to offer in the space. And what are those 4 acquisitions that you spoke of earlier that you're going to meld into a unit, an electrophysiology unit?
Yeah, when I look about just the AF patient, how do we really try to encompass, technology that is meaningful, from loop recorders from the start of the diagnosis, or Preventus, which Scott Olson runs in our business. He's a great leader that really has run that business, and there's a lot of opportunity to grow there, all the way through to different technologies, whether it's RF energy. We've got our stable point ablation catheter, which basically combines our force sensing with direct sense. Direct sense is a proprietary tool to monitor changes in local impedance around the tip of the catheter, which offers physicians, the additional information they need to kind of understand their lesion set. So for years, people have been ablating, and lesion sets are becoming more and more important, because the way you address tissue in ablation to try to really take out that circuit that's creating the arrhythmia, RF has been that energy modality of choice in nearly 80% of ablations. And we've got this new stable point catheter that should come to the US market here next year this time. We conducted a trial the Newton AF trial, the clinical trial, which should be finishing here very shortly. And our goal is to try to get this to the US market. It's already approved in Japan and EMEA and doing really well. But that takes direct sense and combines force sensing, which we haven't had for a number of years. And I think that was a big gap in our portfolio. Mm-hmm. We've got that stable point, coupled with a cryoablation system, PolarX. That's our second generation, I would say, type of a cryoablation system. It's got advantages that I think can really offer today's operator with more flexibility. It's more modern. And it's also going to have a larger size balloon, the Polar Fit balloon. So we've got an RF energy modality option. We've got a cryo energy modality option. And we equally have electroporation, which I just spoke about with FerroPulse. So we're going to have all different energy modalities in our portfolio, can really accommodate whatever interests an electrophysiologist would want for their patients. And you couple that with, call it Watchman Flex and Baylis, and we've got a portfolio that I think is super strong as we try to transform everything in electrophysiology in this very competitive space. And you have to be offering a lot of choices if you really want to be a big competitor. And that's what I'm excited about as we move forward.
That's great. Well, I want to get into Baylis in a moment, but I'm just curious about the different types of energy. How do physicians sort of choose the energy that they need for a specific procedure? Is it situation oriented? Is it some physicians prefer this and prefer that? What is the defining characteristic or the quality that they look for when they choose the energy they're going to use for a specific procedure?
Well, I think it really depends on the operator. I think an operator that is truly, focused on their capabilities, the point-by-point RF approach and the results that they've seen for quite some time. I mean, that's the standard that most are comfortable with, and they do a really good job with that. I think what we've learned the last, call it 5+ years, is from a cryo standpoint, some folks are not only wanting great results, but they're trying to see if they can be more efficient. They can be faster with being able to do something. And the cryo does offer some efficiency for PVI isolation. Now, you take those two energy modalities and then you look at electroporation, which I think combines both. And that's where I think the field could transform. And I think only time will tell once we see some of the clinical evidence sometime next year or the year thereafter that really will convince the field on whether or not this is going to be the energy modality of choice moving forward. So it's exciting. And I think we're learning a lot, but I think the safety associated with how these different energy modalities are progressing will really start to drive the preferred choice, not only for operators, but what patients want. So if for example, electroporation or FerroPulse is truly safer, I think we live in a world today where patients are much smarter. They're looking things up. They're getting diagnosed with AF and they're not even in the parking lot at their car, looking or Googling what they've been diagnosed with. And they're already getting, call it, channeled to some site that educates them on the newest and most advanced things. And I think if we can prove that with electroporation, which the early work seems to really have a signal that this could be safer.
Wow.
I think it could change everything. So obviously you can sense my passion and excitement because I think it's an opportunity for us. Yeah,
no, that sounds great. I didn't realize that. I thought this would still be one of those fields where patients just kind of say, do what you want to do, what you think is best, doc, sort of thing, that there wasn't that level of differentiation that patients sort of pick up on and latch onto.
Well, I think we've seen that. The only reason I speak with confidence on that is we've seen that with Watchman. We did something different. We ran a TV commercial. I remember presenting that to our board of directors, and most kind of felt that was maybe not going to work. And it was a chance. We took a chance. Mike Mahoney, our CEO, really allows us to take, real good risks. And that was a good chance that paid off because what we found was it allowed us to at least have the patient learn more about this alternative, drive the question for consideration with their referring cardiologist. And today, it's one of the fastest growing businesses that we have. Why? Because we think by educating patients on their alternatives to drive a discussion with their physicians starts to open up for other choices that may or may not be better for them. And so times are changing and we're excited to be a part of it. And this is just a really exciting opportunity as we move forward in electrophysiology to do it yet again.
So has direct to consumer become an avenue for this as well? Is it more well-placed papers and things like that influencing kind of media?
I think time will tell, but my sense is just based on the AF journey, because we've got all of the algorithms to know how to connect with this patient. Depending on how the clinical trials really start to show results, my sense is if they show what we think it's going to show, the data, we could easily follow that same course of action. And I think it's just how do you respectfully educate patients on their alternatives and have the healthcare provider and the patient talk about what's best collectively.
Fascinating. Well, let's talk about Baylis. How did you obviously come to know this story, this company. I've learned more and more about it preparing for this interview. Really fascinating origins. How did the acquisition sort of come to be? What was the moment where there appeared to be some sort of synergy that you two could act on?
Well, first of all, it is an excellent acquisition. The team of people at Baylis and the products, and this has been in the works for over 6 years. I got a lot of respect for Chris Shaw and Frank Baylis. They've built an incredible company. They've got great people, a great portfolio. And I'm excited because it really integrates really well with the Boston Scientific family of products and offering. And it's one of the bigger ones that we've conducted in cardiology the last several years, $1.75 billion. When I look at it, they really integrated with us. Again, I go back to the Watchman journey. Our goal was to do no harm when we were introducing Watchman because it was going up against medications. And we wanted a safe transseptal crossing solution, crossing from the right side to the left side of the heart, which is a really important aspect of a left-sided procedure because you want to make sure when you're working on the left side, you've got the ability to do whatever work you need to, whether it's an ablation, whether it's a Watchman implant, or whether it's potentially even a mitral procedure, that it allows the operator to safely get there and be able to do the work they have to in an effective way. And Baylis has the best solution. They're market leader, and their approach to doing this safely really fit well into the Watchman educational journey when we were training operators, and partnered with them. And this was something that just inspired us to look further and can we partner together in some other way. And the discussions just really took more meaningful actions over the course of time. And we were able to work something out with Chris and Frank. And I'm really excited because it's a great complement to everything that we're offering today.
What does Baylis's tech and portfolio allow for you to do now and in the future?
Well, as I look at it, their culture has played a really important role for us. And they're very aligned, and dedicated to improving the health and lives of patients around the world. I mean, that's our mission. But they've got products that allow us to work not just in the field of ablation, not only in the field of left atrial appendage occlusion with Watchman, but also in structural heart valves, being able to, get over to the left side for mitral valve work. We don't have a mitral valve product today, but getting access into that space. And this is a growing space. So there's 750,000 transseptal crossings in the world that are done today. And that number is expected to double over the next 5+ years. So they're leaders in that space. It's going to present not only the opportunity to complement a lot of different things we're doing for left-sided procedures, which is a really big area for us, but it's going to immediately start to generate some profit for us. So the acquisition will add meaningful revenue, operating income, and new R&D capabilities across multiple Boston Scientific businesses. So that's one thing that comes instantly. And it expands, just like I said, our lab access to a full suite of just various Boston Scientific EP and structural heart devices, whether it's Watchman or other things that we're going to offer in the future. There's going to be some workflow enhancements in both the EP and the Watchman procedures. We'll be able to integrate some of the R&D efforts to have even less exchanges when you're on the left side of the heart, Tom. So these are the things, from a clinical standpoint, a development standpoint, a commercial standpoint, overall, that really drives meaningful opportunity for the business.
And what will the physical integration look like? Are you buying products or are you buying a company? And are you bringing a lot of people over as part of this acquisition?
A little bit of everything. I mean, this is not your usual acquisition. They're just a really buttoned up organization. They've got just great processes and great people. And so it'll be, how do we expand the opportunity? So we're going to open up some manufacturing facilities in Costa Rica to expand that capabilities. We'll still have some facilities in Canada that we're going to keep. If we're involved in so many tens of thousands of procedures today, how do we get involved with hundreds of thousands over the course of time? Given this is a $1 billion opportunity today, and we want to capture as much of that as possible as it continues to grow. Our distribution channel or our footprint across the globe is much bigger. And take the success that they've already put into place, and we want to, try to drive more distribution channels through our great commercial teams. They've got a great commercial team, but we're going to continue to integrate some of the success that they've already delivered upon and try to just expand that footprint. And some of those people are going to be able to help us in other areas that we're going to represent in the business. So there's a lot of talent there that I think can be used in many ways, a lot of resources that we could continue to use in many ways. And there's a lot of learnings that they bring to the table that I think is going to make us better. And that's really the story about Boston Scientific. We're a collection of these companies that has made us who we are today.
That's great. And final question, do you have a shopping list? And was this the last item on it? Is it crossed off?
Well, the shopping always continues. And you have to be strategic and smart about it. I think Mike Mahoney challenges the organization to make sure that we make the right decisions. This is an exciting one. I can't reveal what we're thinking about or going to talk about next, but I think our challenge is how do we continue to deliver upon the next big acquisition like we did with Baylis? So that's our challenge. We feel good about this one. We've made a number of really good decisions, and we want to continue to exemplify that as we move forward.
Fantastic. Dick, I really enjoyed talking with you and learning about your progress. Can't wait to follow the story going forward.
Great. Likewise, Tom. Thanks so much. And I hope this was beneficial for you and your listeners.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. Well, Brian Johnson, you're our guest here on Device Talks. You get to go first. How can folks find you or find MassMedic out there in social media land?
Well, first of all, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Chris. And thanks for taking what we built so many years ago and keeping it so vital and improving upon it. I'm excited about what you guys are doing.
It's been a real honor, man.
Absolutely.
It's great to talk to you again.
Thank you. You can keep in touch with us through LinkedIn. We have our own great LinkedIn page at MassMedic, massmedic.com. We are, those are the two primary ways you can keep in touch with us. I'm not super active on Twitter, but we're going to be doing a lot more really cool social stuff, and just keep checking in with us, and thanks for having me.
I definitely will. We'll certainly have you back. And Chris Newmarker, where can we find you out there in social media land?
Hey, you can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Newmarker. Always happy to chat with people, and don't forget all of our sites, and as well as MassDevice, medical design outsourcing, and more. You got to follow, subscribe.
Absolutely. And I am on Twitter. Even though it now belongs to Elon Musk, I'm at Medtech Tom, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Are you excited about the edit button, Tom? Are you excited?
I'm always excited about an edit button, my friend. You know me. I've had some near run-ins with some horrible mistakes. So anything I can do to cover up my tracks, I'm all in favor of. So.
And all of a sudden, you'll be constantly prodded to buy Tesla, like for some reason. You're like
drawing blood from a stone on that one. He can ask all he wants, but that ain't happening.
They should sponsor Device Talks.
They should. Yes, I should stop talking. Yes.
There you go. Yeah. Come on, Tom.
Oh, and
let's get some Elon money, Tom. Come on, man.
You can follow, subscribe this podcast, subscribe to the Device Talks podcast channel. You get the Device Talks weekly podcast, Stryker Talks, Intuitive Talks, and of course you can subscribe to Medtronic Talks. It has its own channel. And please do share this podcast episode and make sure that folks out there in Massachusetts and across the world learn about MassMedic and about Device Talks Boston and Device Talks Minnesota. They're all coming up. That's right. Device Talks Boston, May 10th and 11th. Device Talks Minnesota on June 6th and 7th. Go to Device Talks.
A whirlwind of MedTech networking. Awesome.
You're stepping on my website site, devicetalks.com for more information. That's a wrap. Chris Newmarker, thanks for joining us. And Brian Johnson, thanks for creating this whole damn thing and for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
See everybody in just a week or two.